Hi there, psychology kids! We're continuing our theme of minimizing extraneous variables in this video by looking at different types of experiments and also counterbalancing. But let's start with the former. Different types of experiments are used through psychological research, including case studies, observation, interviews, surveys, and psychological tests. Each of these has advantages and disadvantages during research. For example, observational studies allow the subject to react naturally in a non-artificial environment, but they may also take a long time and ultimately may be fruitless. On the other hand, surveys are quantitatively easy to compare, but the questions may produce limited or biased responses. For a summary of the 5 different types, check the text below this video. Another way to minimize the effects of extraneous variables is through counterbalancing. Counterbalancing is most typically used when the study uses only one research group, that is, when the sample is exposed to both the research and the experimental conditions. In these situations, it may have an impact whether the sample is exposed to the research condition or the experimental condition first. That is, order effects might be apparent. To account for this, we can use counterbalancing. In counterbalancing, half of the participants are exposed to the experimental condition and then the research conditions, whilst the other half are exposed to the research condition and then the experimental condition. By doing this, the study is likely to avoid order effects. So here we have a question from the 2013 VCAR exam. It reads, Dr. Tran conducted an independent groups design experiment on a technique for remembering nonsense syllables. The experimental group used Dr. Tran's learning technique and had a greater recall of nonsense syllables than the control group. To prevent a biased sample and to control for participant differences in her experiment, Dr. Tran would respectively need to use A. Counterbalancing and random sampling, B. Random sampling and counterbalancing, C. Random allocation and random sampling, or D. Random sampling and random allocation. One of the 4 options here relates to counterbalancing. But in the case study, Dr. Tran used an independent group design, meaning that there was both an experimental group and a control group. This means the participants would not experience both research conditions, thus there would be no need for counterbalancing. The answer, incidentally, is D. Next up, we're looking at single and double-blind procedures. Keep working hard and have a psychedelic day.